The drama. I was not prepared for the drama of those coming chapters. Hey guys, welcome back to the read-along of the Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg LaTorre. I'm Kat, and we made it to chapter 30. It starts off great, with Gwen telling you, victory wasn't always sweet, but no one said victory was paired with death. What victory has Gwen achieved in the past few chapters? None that I've noticed. She had her leg broken, she had to extract more implants, one of her friends got shot, they all survived the third competition, yes, but, victory is very relative here, I think. It's now been weeks since the last competition, and the Obedient is on its way to Covenant and the capital city of Allegiant. And Gwen tells you that she feels a chill and her chest is hollow, but mostly she's chilly, even though the weather in Allegiant should be warm. And I'm like, you're still out in space, the weather on the planet really does not matter. So the Obedient enters the planet's natural gravity field and instantly switches off both gravity and oxygen. I'm like, if there are actually people on deck, then, the gravity, that should be fine. But if you've only just cleared the atmosphere, then shutting down the oxygen is probably a bad idea. You might have some fainted sailors laying around the deck at this point. Gwen tries to talk to Bastion, but he just blanks her out and treats her as if he didn't know her at all. He knows her name, but, as if there was no personal connection between them. And Gwen figures out something is wrong with him. She does learn that he spends most of his time with Celeste at this point, but that's pretty much all the results she gets from sneaking after him. It's also not easy to sneak after people if you have a leg broken and you move around with a crutch, but still, that's all she learns. And then Celeste makes another speech telling people that they are now headed for Allegiant and blah blah blah. I say blah blah blah, but I'm not affected by Celeste. But Gwen doesn't seem to care what she's talking about either. And you would think that at this point Gwen has figured out that Celeste is one of her biggest enemies. Possibly not the only enemy, but definitely the biggest one she has to deal with right now. So she would possibly pay her some attention. But no, she only has eyes for Bastion because nothing else exists in Gwen's mind. They land in Allegiant and have to walk into the palace because apparently these spaceships, once they land, they go down into water and then function as normal sail ships. So they moored their ship and start walking. Then we get the humans standing at the edge of the docks, and along the streets ahead were dressed in clean, colorful garments rather than the grease-stained browns and beige Gwen was accustomed to seeing on the manufacturing planets and moons. Humans? So if you describe them as humans, is this just opposed to cyborgs because you are still basically human? But so if you say humans, then I would expect alien races to be common as well. But we've seen none of those so far. I have to assume it's just between cyborgs and humans, but you're not a different species. We get a display of racism though, because people insult the cyborgs, throw rotten fruit and stones, all kinds of stuff at the cyborgs while they march through town. And in between, Gwen couldn't help but wonder if they knew about the Emperor's plan to convince the Union Council to revoke the Cyborg Prohibition Law. First off, you don't know that's actually going to happen. Second, why would your average citizen know exactly what the government is up to? Like behind closed doors? No, of course they don't know. But Celeste equipped all of the cyborgs with umbrellas to protect her performers against the stones that are being thrown at them, and that must be some interesting umbrella if it's good enough to ward off stones. Gwen takes all of the insults and violence so far pretty well, but when some woman on the side flashes them as a way to insult them, I suppose, that's never how I understood flashing, but it doesn't matter. That's when Gwen loses it and actually wants to charge up onto this balcony that this woman is standing on to punch her or something. And he's just like, this is what it takes to make you angry? it's just a very weird thing to get mad about compared to all of the other things, you know. If you're surrounded by people who clearly hate you and who are happy to throw shit at you, then somebody pulling down their top is what tips you over the edge. Okay. Gwen drops some wisdom on us. No one was the same after the third competition. It took until the third competition for that to sink in, to actually have an impact. Like, people have been vanishing around you for weeks now, and it takes until the third competition and people being shot on stage for you to notice, oh, this isn't going so well, is it? Gwen comes up with another master plan. The Emperor has the power to purchase contracts from the Cirque du Bourg, which is what Roar is intending to do, or has been intending to do this whole time. But now Gwen thinks, ooh, this is our way out. If we can convince him to buy more contracts, then we are free. And I still don't understand why you would think that he cares to buy any contract at all to begin with. And then what exactly would you do to convince him? Deliver a killer performance, okay, but I think it would need a bit more to make that happen. But first and foremost, I don't see why the Emperor, who is the reason that these cyborg laws exist at all, would give a shit. He won't. But Gwen is in full-on master planning mode. Hell, I bet the Emperor would pay us a salary in marks rather than false promises. Gwen, you're a moron. He's not gonna pay you anything. And once again, Gwen told you how much she cares about her cyborg family, but now it's limited to Bastion, maybe Roa, Mazana, Arcu, and herself. You know, maybe she can talk Bastion into staying with her and leaving the circus behind, you know, if the Emperor buys their contracts. Sure. But all of the other performances, Gwen doesn't care. The world building does this mixing of sci-fi and medieval fantasy setting that I am not convinced actually works. So the guards at the Emperor's palace wear full steel armor. Is that actually massively good against guns though? I'm not convinced they are. We're circling back to the umbrellas that are made out of rubber and are big enough and sturdy enough to hold back stones, right? So when they get to the palace, they have to drop all of their weapons and stuff on the table, including those umbrellas. So Gwen puts hers down. The thing weighed nearly as much as a copper bathtub. And she has been carrying this with one arm before. So you're telling me that Gwen can lift a bathtub with one hand? Maybe she is the Terminator. And worst of all, personally, I think, is that Gwen also turns into somebody who can't do anything by herself. She's right now just pleading for Bastion to look at her in her mind. Of course, it doesn't do anything. He's just like, oh my god, can you get your shit together and maybe do something yourself and not just wait for this guy to come and fix everything? Like, ugh. So the performers get marched into the hall and they actually meet the Emperor. We get this piece of background information while Gwen is staring at the table where the council usually sits. The Emperor ruled over a covenant while the governors and governesses were representatives from the 13 planets respectively, though none possessed power over the physical territories. I'm not sure what that's supposed to tell me. The Emperor is ultimately in charge, yeah sure, but you know, if you put a governor into office somewhere, then they are supposed to do something on that planet, so Gwen sees the Emperor for the first time and describes him, and we get this bit. Around his eyes were laugh lines, but deep caverns bracketed either side of his lips. Okay, he has wrinkles, lines or whatever around his mouth, but deep caverns just sounds more like a Joker injury than something you would usually find on a human face. And it turns out all the governors and governesses are there as well. But Gwen didn't mention them. She was just talking about the table that they were sitting at, and then she went to the Emperor, something about the room, and then she's like, oh yeah, the governors and blah are there as well. It's like, why would you pay this much attention to the damn table if there are like 13 people seated around it? Celeste is very demure when talking to the Emperor, and Gwen doesn't buy any of it, which is fair enough. But then we get to this bit. Titus turned to the circus. Tomorrow at sundown you will perform for myself and the Union Council. The performers around Gwen whispered excitedly. Although anyone with at least Abercon's intelligence could have guessed this was the reason they were here, it was as though it clicked for the first time. Most of the performers smiled, shifting in skirts and straightening jackets. So you've been told for quite a few weeks now that, yeah, we're going there to perform for the Emperor. That was the point of the competitions, to whittle it down to 10 acts that will then go to the Emperor. And now you're like, oh, we're actually here to perform. You've known this for quite some time. Also, that's not really what you're there for. We can already guess as much, but like... And then for Gwen to pull out anyone with at least Abercon's intelligence. Girl, you are no smarter than Abercon. Actually, I think my cat might be smarter than you at points. The performers get taken to their quarters so they can rest until the evening or the next day or whichever. And we get this bit of snark from Gwen. It appeared the Emperor wished to store his cyborg guests in a massive tower, away from his human citizens. How kind. The sarcasm in this for how kind. It's like, yeah, it's also safer for you. I mean, you've seen how the people in town reacted to you, so why would you want to be closer to these folks? Gwen is trying to rope Mezzana and Arceus into her master plan, of course. She meets up with Mezzana and Arceus briefly and tells them to please rehearse tonight. Go easy on your shoulder, Arceus. He can't do both. Either he's rehearsing acrobatics or he's going easy on the shoulder. He can't do both at the same time, Gwen, and you should know that. And because Gwen needs more people for her master plan, she goes in search of Aurora. And because she doesn't know which room she's in, she just tries various doors. She knocks or just barges in, whichever. And then we get this little scene where she runs in on a blowjob that adds absolutely nothing to the chapter, absolutely nothing. But then Gwen goes with, when she finally found the room she sought, she knocked. So now you know which room you're looking for? Why did you barge in onto these other two guys having a blowjob then? What was the point? And we all know the point is actually the author wanted more sex scenes in there. Fine, but you know, why not just let Gwen have sex with both Aurora and Bastion at some point then? Could write those scenes. Aurora needs some convincing, but Gwen knows exactly how to do it. Because I can give you what you want most in the world. Oh, and what's that? Gwen exhaled heavily. Me. There is some confidence you got going there, Gwen. I thought you established that she only used you and now Aurora really wants you around? That's a leap of confidence I didn't see coming. And at the beginning of chapter 31 we see that Aurora agrees. Aurora laughed. You flatter yourself. Yeah, that is true. Gwen is totally flattering herself there because I don't see it. But what Aurora wants is not Gwen per se, but her own Cyborg Tinkerer, so somebody can keep taking care of her hand, right? But Gwen essentially invites herself into Aurora's life with this. It's like, yeah, I will stick around and be your Cyborg Tinkerer. So what you're really doing, Gwen, is hoping that Aurora wins and then you will stick around to be part of the cozy life that Aurora supposedly would lead after this performance. Gwen lets Aurora in on her new master plan of trying to secure patronage for several people. Yeah, but Aurora is up for the exchange, so if she gets her own Cyborg Tinkerer, then she will help Gwen out. And part of that help is being Gwen's date to the ball that is supposed to happen that evening. And then to help her spy on Bastion. Oh, and help her get ready, because we needed another scene where they get ready together. Minus some of the sexual tension though. So. Gwen informs Aurora just why Bastion is suddenly hanging out with the mistress, even though he absolutely hated her before. And Rora asks, did you actually try to go through with your plan? And Gwen gets really mad. It's like, yes, of course I did. And then Bastion had to show up and save her. And Gwen accuses her, if you hadn't told Abrakan, none of this would have happened. I'm not so sure about that, but, you know, also Rora was cornered and being threatened, so, you know. And you knew that she had told Abrakan, so you could have come up with another plan instead of going through with this shoddy piece of a plan to begin with. They yell at each other for a bit. Rora because she's sorry that she hurt anybody. Gwen because she's mad that she wanted Rora once upon a time and was used and didn't get her way. Rora does tell her that it wasn't a complete lie. She actually cared for Gwen and was interested. But, you know, Gwen doesn't want to believe it. So, They get ready in silence from there on out. And the repetition is really just as bad as in the first 2 chapters, where she keeps telling you that she's dying. The woman who betrayed Gwen and her friends to Abrakan. Oh my god. We know she betrayed you. We know she hurt your feelings. Can we not repeat this again? Gwen and Rora get to the ball, and it turns out it's exclusively cyborgs, so apparently nobody wants to mingle with cyborgs. But that's okay, at least they get something to eat and they can enjoy themselves for a little bit. Gwen asks a valid question in regards to that though. Why would the Emperor go to such lengths to host a dinner party, only to have no one but the guests of honor attend? Why not forego the farce altogether and save his resources for the day he intended to speak with the Union Council about the Cyborg Prohibition Law? Well, okay, part of that is a valid question. Why bother having only cyborgs in one room together? I wonder. And she still thinks the Emperor intends to talk to the Union Council about the Cyborg Prohibition Law, a law which he passed in the first place. I hate, like, sometimes Gwen can't see the forest for all the trees or something. It's really bad. Rora apologizes to Mezana and Arcu as well. I kind of thought she had already done that before, but she apologizes. She didn't want anybody to get hurt. And yeah, the conversation gets a bit heated, but I think at least Mezana is a bit more forgiving. She does tell her it's life or death. Either we fight to live or we can die like the Union wants us to. But we do not hurt our own. But I think that's the extent of resistance you will get from Mezana in regards to this. Unfortunately, Mezana is no smarter than Gwen. Do whatever you feel you must, Mezana said. Tomorrow I plan on being fucking spectacular and gaining the Emperor's patronage to get out of this hellhole we call the circus. Yeah. I can't believe there's not a single cyborg who thinks this is all fishy as hell. There will be no patronage for anybody. Bastion and the mistress appear and immediately head to the dance floor, and apparently they dance as if they were made for each other and for this very moment. Gwen clenched her fist so hard that her short nails stuck into her palms, breaking the skin. And why do I get the impression that this is jealousy rather than actual anger at the mistress for whatever she has done to Bastion? Because clearly he's not acting normally. And yet Gwen is just here like, he's dancing with somebody else. I'm like, oh god. Seriously, if I had the opportunity to step into a book and slap a couple of people, oh my god, I would have done so much slapping in this book. Gwen and Rora manage to push onto the dance floor, and while they exchange partners in this particular dance, Gwen manages to get a hold of Bastion and tries to talk to him, and he is still like a blank slate. Shocker, because, you know, the reader has picked up on this a couple of pages ago, but Gwen still needs a minute. Gwen goes outside to have a cry. Rora follows her to inquire what she learned, and then figures out, oh my god, Gwen actually loves this guy. And I think she is very civil and nice about it, because she's just like, yeah, well, he needs you more than ever now, if he's not in his right mind, whatever. So yeah, Rora decides that she will try to help Gwen. It is a bit of a weird switch from Roar though. Like the last time they talked, she was like, oh my god, you were already fucking this guy while we were still dating, or kind of dating, I don't know. And then sometime in between she called him, or she referred to him as just a rebound because Gwen didn't get together with Roar in the end. And now she's all gung-ho about helping Gwen to save Bastion. It's an example, I think, of characters doing what the plot requires them to do, or to add cheap drama, whichever, rather than what you would actually expect from the character. For instance, I would have never expected the wild jealousy from Roar. That really doesn't fit with the other stuff we learned about this woman. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another video. Like and subscribe if you want to help the channel out. And let me know whether you think any performer will actually secure patronage, or will they all just get murdered? Which is more likely? Anyway, bye guys!